we know one of the things that's going to happen the closer we get to the rapture is a rise in phenomena. When things heat up on earth, they're going to heat up in the heavenlies, or because they're heating up in the heavenlies. And so ever since World War II and the dawn of the modern UFO era, which I connect UFOs and cryptids and other phenomenalistic type stuff, we've seen a rise in this stuff that's not explainable, because it's ultimately a spiritual battle. We're seeing Satan and his celestial beings on his side do battle with God and good angels, and it's just exploding. And so it's interesting that there has been a steep incline, almost like a hockey stick graph of sightings. And it's not just because we have better eyesight now.
Exactly.
These are not the kind of things you're looking through a telescope to see. You're walking around hunting or whatever, and you see them, and the people are seeing them everywhere now.
Yeah, I mean, so you have an increase again in the paranormal, and to me, this is in the West, at least in the United States, we have such a block, I think, on we're so scientific, right? Again, in these, unless you can touch, taste it, doesn't exist. And so it's like, God doesn't exist because we can't put him in a test tube or measure him or whatever. And again, this reliance on empirical, again, epistemology, how do we know things? And which again is only one side of it. But I think C.S. Lewis talked about this, where he, on one hand, in the Screwtape Letters, where on one hand, there's an overemphasis and on the spiritual realm, and then you become a witch, or you become seeking, part of doing that craft, Satanist, I guess. And the other side is the empiricist, the materialist, the naturalist that says, but clearly there's nothing. And so obviously those are the two extremes, to ignore them altogether or embrace them too much.
Yeah.
And so I think in our country, we're probably more towards the naturalistic side, no doubt, rather than living in Jamaica where there's voodoo and other things. But it works. It keeps people blind to the reality of the spiritual side.
It really does. My latest book, which I think we've talked about before, The Great Last Days Apostasy, has a chapter on epistemology. Why do you believe what you believe? And I have a chart that shows all the different influences on why we think we know what we know. And, all of them have some merit. They have their place.
Yes.
But none of them can stand alone as the ultimate arbiter of truth. And so the fact that there are hoaxes and there are false sightings does not eliminate the fact that there are real ones, right? So
because that's always the case, right?
Yeah.
That's almost like go out there and have Doug and Dave, like for crop circles as an example, go out Doug and Dave with their boards and see, there it is. It's all a bunch of hoax. And you're like, that's a psyop, it seems like itself.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, do you get into crop circles?
I think, I know I get into animal mutilations. I can't remember if that section discusses crop circles. I've certainly talked about it in conferences and from stages before. But yeah, this is stuff that, you can't explain it any other way. It's not empirical in the sense of you could explain it other than something really weird is happening here.
And it is a real event. I mean, you think about, again, just going with that with crop circles, where many of them appear in seconds. And somebody was there and not there, and the next thing you're like, well, so that Doug and Dave are not out there, and some of them were so sophisticated, that, again, there are hoaxes, but there are people out there in Bigfoot suits, doing videos, whatever. But again, it goes back to the idea that the paranormal is increasing, and it reminds me, I guess, in my mind, I think of the Book of Revelation during the tribulation period, the 70th week of Daniel, where my question, do you think will there be any atheists during the 7th week of Daniel? I mean, supernaturalism is going to be...
you would think no, but I don't know if you'd strictly call them atheists, but there's certainly going to be people, as Revelation laments, that nevertheless still
unrepentant
are unrepentant.
But they're worshiping demons, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's what I mean, is maybe they're supernatural. Will there be any non-supernaturalists? They're obviously going to believe in... your book, Spirit of the False Prophet, he's going to be doing,
signs and wonders.
Signs and wonders.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be, I think that'll bring about the death of empiricism at some point because it's all around you. But, the sad thing is, unfortunately, and this is by design, most Christians have fallen into this trap as well. And that's because of the influence of public schooling and, again, Satan's deception. But most Christians, even though it's plain as day right here in Ephesians 6, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. That's supernatural stuff. That's the unseen realm, right?
Yeah.
That's not physicality, and yet most Christians just dismiss it. They just think, oh, this is crazy. There's no real magic. It's all fake. And there's no real spiritism. It's all fake. No, it's very real, and it's increasing, which is why so many Christians today are more deceived than ever before, in my opinion.
You know, sadly, I think, when did we, again, what you just read there, as Christians, where we read about angels, we read about the resurrection, we read about other supernatural events, when did we think that those only are in that book, pages with letters on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know it's largely a rhetorical question, but still, I think if you go back through time and you see the rise of the modern era, when we couldn't do so much, people, even unbelievers, had a greater sense of dependency on providence, on God, on the Creator, faith, because they had to trust God for the very necessities of life, right? If it didn't rain, you didn't eat.
Yeah.
You couldn't run to Walmart and buy some mac and cheese. So as time went on and we become advanced, now we can do most anything ourselves. We don't need God. And therefore, when believers get to a point where their back is against a wall and there's some crisis, some heartache, some difficulty in life that is beyond their control, it's hard for them to trust the Lord. They despair.